And in 1995, I was in a psychiatric institution with major anxiety disorder, panic disorder, PTSD, and depression. So welcome to the conference. I'm so happy you're here.
And so I don't mean to be flip, I really don't, but it's my story and I'm not ashamed, I'm not embarrassed. It's why I'm here with you today.
I am Tammy West, and that is my story. Welcome to Consider Yourself Hugged, a place to find comfort and support as you navigate your mental and emotional well-being. So sit back and relax, unless you're driving, and get ready for this week's hug. Well, I am going to tell you all how I met this wonderful woman in just a couple of minutes, but I'm going to read you her bio, talk about how we met, and we are going to have an amazing chat. I feel like I want to start with Dr. JFF, Jennifer Fish-Ferguson. She lives in Michigan, where she does all things writing, which I told her I've stalked her and I've seen some of those things. She is busy doing academic endeavors and writing all about her characters and their many adventures. She spends her free time, I love this, being a fabulous, crazy mom to 2 dynamic boys, A+ #1 wife, and my favorite part, she's an on-call staff member. I'm going to pause for effect. To 4 highly demanding cats, which now that I have a cat, I totally understand what you meant. So Jennifer, I'm going to say affectionately known as Dr. JFF, has been teaching composition, professional and technical writing, genre writing, creative writing, and professional writing at various universities, colleges for the last 8 years. She is a writing coach for the Charles S. Drew Science Scholars Program with experiencing and teaching face-to-face, hybrid, and online courses. She continues to push for more exciting ways to engage people in their writing. Hope you all are hearing how amazing this is so far, and you don't even know what we're going to talk about today. She is a developmental editor and book/writing coach with J. Arthur's Writing Services. She presents at conferences, enjoys speaking engagements, and facilitates writing as meditation workshops. Kind of where we're going. She enjoys writing urban fantasy, paranormal romance, speculative fiction, and YA, let's see, young adult, right?
Yes.
Urban fantasy. She has had a great run self-publishing her books. However, she recently signed with an agent for her YA book series and looks forward to these new adventures. And that's her short bio because she's done a lot. So welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you, Tammy. It's so great to talk with you again.
I know it. I'm just going to throw in real quick how we met, and then I'm just going to start like throwing questions at you. But Jennifer and I met in February in Las Vegas at the Instructional Technology Conference. And these people at this conference are all involved in some way in like digital online learning, just lots and lots of different folks that came there. And so we connected, and, you know, I shared my mental health journey and talked some about mindfulness. And so Jennifer and I chatted at the end, and she talked a little bit about mindfulness and meditation. And I said, you have to be on my show. And now here you are.
Thank you. And I was excited for the invite because mindfulness has been a part of my life for a while, and I keep sharing it with other people as a way to live your best life.
And why do you think, because do you feel like there's still, I don't know if the word is resistance, but people just don't get it? I mean, do you still see that? Because I didn't. Remember, I shared with you, or I shared with the whole group, that I was embarrassed to say that I didn't really start incorporating this into my life until last year.
I think there's not so much resistance as I don't think people understand the impact it'll have, number one. But number two, a lot of people really are lost with how to get started because it seems kind of daunting.
It feels big.
It feels huge. And I can say this 100% assuredly, because along with my writing endeavors, I also teach yoga. And the last 15 minutes is Shavasana, which is your rest and relaxation. I started incorporating 5 minutes of meditation before that relaxation. And for my people who come all the time, my regulars, it took them a good 6 weeks to get 5 minutes of meditation to do what they actually need to do with it. And I think sometimes people try what they think is meditation, and after a couple of minutes, they can't do it. So it's like, oh, well, I just can't do this.
And that's the thing that I said. And that's the thing I've heard people say is, no, I can't. My mind doesn't work that way. But it takes time.
It is very much a practice. And 100%, I am on the go a lot. And I like to go and do things and experience different things. But 30 minutes of meditation is really and truly my lifeline. It's first thing in the morning. It helps me get centered. It helps me get ready. Just kind of in that space of communication, figuring out what the universe wants from me for the day. It helps me get myself together for me first, and then I can go out and be for everybody else. So, but it's a practice. 30 minutes for some people takes years, years and years, because we have a busy, we're busy. That's really what it comes down to.
And I'm still at like 5, but it's been not even like 6 months. And so I'm incorporating more of that. And I have a few things marked on here too and you're going to talk about this. That one of the things that you said, I thought I marked it, but anyway, you said in here somewhere as I'm reading some things off your website that people don't have to associate it with any religion. And that's one of the things
Absolutely not.
A lot. And so I want to say that at the very beginning, because a lot of my viewers and listeners and people who connect with me, because I'm Christian based. And so we live sort of in that world, but that's not you can incorporate that into it.
Sure.
But that's not what it is. And so, right.
For my Christian friends, what I tell people all the time, it's actually in the Bible, is that you are supposed to sit silently and listen to God. So prayer is your method of communicating your wants, your needs, your hurts. Meditation is listening for the answer. So you can bring your religion into it. It just doesn't have to be religiously based. Right. But I think for people who are a little wary of it, it's again, really that unknown. And then a lot of times what I find when I work with meditation groups is some people stay busy to avoid their trauma. Mm-hmm. And when you have to sit with yourself and you're quiet and you're focused, sometimes your head does work it's supposed to, and all of a sudden you start replaying things and your brain tries to filter and work through those things. It's what our brains do. And some people just don't want to. So right. There's a lot more going on besides religion and emotion. It's a whole thing, but it's also healing.
It is. I'm so glad you said those things. And yes, most religious practices do include some form of meditation to sit and be quiet. And so you do all of those things, but the thing that you do that I have never heard of is this writing is meditation. So I'm hoping we can talk a bit about that today. And at the end, by the way, everybody, I'll give you, I think Jennifer does group and individual and practice, meditative things and speaking and all of that. So I'll put all of her information in the show notes. But can you tell us a little bit about that? I haven't heard of writing as meditation.
Absolutely. So I write, imagine that.
Yeah, I saw you write just a little. Just a little.
And so for me, I get really good at compartmentalizing things that don't need to be, because I guess that's how my brain. So I would write and then I would meditate, and never ever once did it cross my mind maybe to join the two until it was about 2017. And I had a group of creative writing students that it was just a rough semester. It was so rough for them. And it was winter semester. Michigan likes to give us snow. Yeah. That year, she was very, very, very bountiful. I think we had like 18 inches over a couple of days.
And so cold.
So we were enjoying that, not at all. But I was working with this group of students and they were just agitated. It was all over their body language. It was all over the way they were breathing. And so I stopped class. I said, you know what, we're going to do this a little differently today. So I had them get up, get the wiggles out, reset their brain. So for people who wonder about the science behind some of our movements, when you shake your hands, shake your feet and kind of wiggle, you actually reset parts of your brain so you can think a little more calmly, because once you get upset, you slide toward the back of your head where all the stress is. So shaking actually brings you back up. So I made them move.
That's good.
And they sat down and I said, we're going to do this differently. We're going to meditate. We're going to breathe. and then you're going to write. So it was 2 minutes of meditation and 2 minutes of writing, 2 minutes of guided meditation again, and 2 minutes of writing. And as I watched them, their writing happened faster. After each of the meditations, they were more articulate, less mistakes. They were just more clear, much more creative. So I said, okay, if you guys don't mind being guinea pigs,
Right.
let's change how we do this semester. And we started doing meditation a little bit longer each time. And then they would write their piece. And then at the end of the class, they would write a reflection on how the class worked. And so,
And
the
you
light bulb.
You just did it.
I was trying to help them calm down because I know meditation can do that.
Okay. And then it just,
But it had unintended effects I just didn't think of, which again, it seems kind of silly when I say it now, because yes, many times when I write, I calm down. That's what it's meant to be.
yeah.
So they decided to let me play, and by the end, I had a really good understanding of how writing can be used as a meditation form and how people could actually engage with things that are sometimes crowding their brain, but they write it down. Now it's out. Now it's not as hard to talk about a trauma when you've already written it out. It's taken some of the sting out of it. So I wrote a presidential grant from my college. The president puts out these mini grants if we want to try things, so we're not dipping into our own pockets. God bless her.
Oh.
And I wrote a grant for student yoga and writing meditation. And I ran it one full semester. It was a volunteer basis for the students. I got them their yoga equipment, and I created a meditation writing journal. And
Wow.
I started out with 22. I ended with 17, which is not bad for people who are
No.
just volunteering, no grade. And we met every Monday and Wednesday for the 4 months of the semester. And their feedback was amazing. Like, from the teaching standpoint, which I geeked out a little bit, like one of my students is like, this is the best semester I've ever had. I didn't miss class. I didn't
Wow.
get sick. My lowest grade was a B. And they're like, please say you're going to run this again. So I have run it every winter semester,
Still on volunteer basis?
still on a volunteer basis. And I get new students. Sometimes I have students who have graduated sneak back in for a session, which I think is totally cool. But it's this process of, we're going to move our bodies. Okay, now we're going to work on our minds and we're going to settle things. So for people who are going to say, well, that's not meditation, that's not sitting quietly. Meditation has a lot of different forms, a lot of different forms. There are guided meditations, verbal writing meditation. There are silent meditations. There are walking meditations. So a meditation is really your mindset and how you get into it. But I've started this process, especially with students, because of that big old whopper in 2020 that completely derailed a lot of things for a lot of people. And my students had the hardest time coping. So when we went to online classes for 2020 and just up until recently, actually, I started basing my writing classes around mindfulness, which, thankfully my college is like, yeah, you can teach whatever you want as long as you teach them to write. And I'm like, cool, I'm going to teach them mindfulness. So we studied mindfulness, we researched it. The first month, I led all the students through a different activity twice a week. That second month, we used music as mindfulness. So everybody got to pick a different song, which amazingly enough that I found, students would rather volunteer to talk than pick a song, because music's personal for people. And I realized it later, but when you ask them for a song, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be judged on my music. And I'm like, no, we just want experiences. You inevitably have heard of bands that I never have. So let's try it out. Let's get a smorgasbord.
Wow.
So the third month we did writing as meditation, every single class period. And then the last month, everybody had to bring their own mindfulness activity to class, because part of what I try to teach in yoga and meditation is this is your practice. So own it. And if it's just sitting there and breathing for 5 minutes, sit there and breathe, or hey, here's this different style of breathing pattern. So that's what I did for 2.5 years, is I did these mindfulness writing-based classes. And again, students showed up to the online Zoom calls that were absolutely voluntary.
Really?
My grade, I mean, I had to go back and check a little bit. I'm like, am I just being easy on people? Not that I'm like trying to destroy people, but no, their caliber of writing was a lot more put together.
Now,
And
what were
go
they?
ahead.
So it was was it always a creative writing class that you did this in?
No, actually, I switched it to my basic introductory research writing classes.
So they
So
were writing.
their
What were they
topic.
writing?
So they had to research mindfulness and the different forms
Okay.
and how long it had been done, how you incorporate it into your life. We looked at the scientific benefits of it. So they got a lot of nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system information. Because I very laughingly say, because I teach writing, I can teach you to write using whatever topic is out there, because
It's
writing is
still
kind of
writing.
formulaic.
Yeah.
So, and what I found, having the students start to lead their own, is it locked it in for them. And then I started getting this feedback of, oh, I had to use that square breathing technique the other day at work because people are just so in their feels about everything. So it wasn't just the benefit that they saw, but they started looking at other people like, you need a little bit of meditation in your life. You seem a little upset. And my funniest story, it's funny now. It was actually funny when it happened. So it was my last face-to-face class that I taught. And the first 10 minutes of class was meditation, period. And the door was locked. You can't come in until meditation is over. And one of my kids, he was always there, always there. And he wasn't. And I was like, okay, well, it's winter. They might have a cold or something.
Mhm.
But he was there at the 11-minute mark, looking in the door, like, let me in. And I opened the door, and child, because he's 18, I'm old. I've gotten to that point. If
I know. Yeah.
you're under 40, you're a kid. I'm sorry.
Yes, me too.
But 6'2", built guy on the track team. He was eyes this big. He's like, I don't get to breathe today. He was so upset. I'm like, oh, baby boy, you have to breathe. If you're not breathing, that's a whole other problem. But it
That
was
is so
actually
sweet.
a great moment, because then I could look at the class and say, it's not just for here. You can do this everywhere. And guess what? If you're not breathing, there's a problem. So people aren't going to know if you're doing a box breath, or if you're doing fire breathing, or if you're calming yourself breathing. They're just going to watch you breathe. That's it. But
Wow. That is so huge. And my mind is like, you have no idea as I'm listening to you. I'm just thinking of all the things that have to learn, about this practice in general. And one of the things that I'm wondering too is, so as far as the writing goes, what about people who just don't like to write? And I am one of those people. Even though I've written several books, it's just a practice that it doesn't. I like to talk, and so when I'm walking, I'll speak things, I will record things, but the act of just writing, even though I know it's good, but I don't really enjoy it. So what do you say to us?
5 minutes. That's it. 5 minutes at the start of every day. And as your practice grows, you start to see the benefit. So I could not tell you how many students online and face-to-face that walk into my writing classroom and say, well, I hate writing, but I have to take your class.
Here I am, right?
Thank you. Feel so much better
Yeah.
about my life now.
When I
people,
taught biology, and I taught at the college level for a while too, and it was the same thing. It was like, well, thanks. I hate biology. Okay. No, you don't.
what I tell them is, you haven't been taught to write in a way that makes sense to you. that's where a lot of frustration, and I can say that 100% because I am not a maths girl. Nope, math was frustrating. And because it was frustrating, I thought I didn't like it. Because I thought I didn't like it, I didn't try to do it. So I didn't do as well as I could have.
Mhm.
Couple of years later, when I was in grad school, what I found out is there are 6 different methodologies to teaching math. America uses one. And my brain liked the way that the Japanese do it. That's how it made sense to me in the way they taught it. So I had to relearn math with a different methodology. And I tell my students that to tell them, I'm going to give you different ways to learn to write. But for people who don't like to write, 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, put it down, walk away from it. Because what will happen is either you will stay at 5 minutes and it's productive for you, or you inch on to 6 minutes, or maybe you really get in a groove and you go 10 minutes. And even though I enjoy writing, some days it's just 5 minutes. And I'm like looking at my watch, like, okay, well, that was 2 minutes. Let me write for 3 more. So,
I want you as a teacher. I want you as a teacher. Well,
well, we can just stay friends and have lovely conversations.
yes, well, but you do the classes and the
I do.
coaching and all those things too. So how can you, people who watch and listen to this podcast are here for like mental and emotional well-being and tips. And if there were 3 things, or like, how do you encourage people to get started? And I mean, I'm saying the writing is meditation because that's something that I think is new and different, but whatever you think will help people the most, what would you, and your 5-minute tip just helped me a lot. I can do that.
So 5 minutes is my first tip. My second tip is if you have a huge issue writing, even in those 5 minutes, switch your medium. Crayons are great. Crayons are a lot of fun.
Oh,
Use different colors. It doesn't have to be boring, or colored markers or colored pencils. And if you have the big feels about something and you really want to get it down on paper, but you know it's going to make you feel awkward,
the big
the
feels.
big feels.
Okay.
And that can be good or bad, quite frankly. It doesn't always have to be trauma and bad things. Sometimes you have really good things, and it's hard to write because you don't know how to express your joy. Sometimes you don't. So my advice for that one is a pencil, a notepad of paper, lay on your back and write upside down. It forces your brain to think differently. So those are my top 3 for writing: is set your timer, use a different medium because colors are great. It evokes different things out of you, and then write laying on your back.
Wow. Okay, so help me with this. So I do my mindfulness meditation in the morning as well. And it's so funny because it started, I probably shared this. I've shared it so many stinking times, but it was really powerful for me when I was teaching teachers, and I did a 3-minute mindfulness meditation with them, but I had multiple groups 15 times during that week. And I did it. So I did it 3 times a day for 5 days. And by the end of the week, I found myself doing it in the hotel. And now in the hotel, I was rooming with just a dear friend, and I love her so much. And we go to Houston every year and we room together. And it was just this connection of, it just made me just feel so happy. So I do it in the mornings. So if I'm going to do this, you know, like incorporate the writing with the mindfulness, like does that look? Because you've talked about the wiggles and the writing and the breathing. And if someone were going to take 5 minutes to start, can we do all of that? Or how would that look?
So when I do the meditation with the group, and this might help, we got in a place where it could be comfortable. Some people laid on their stomach, some people sat up. So find that position. And I always gave them a prompt. And when I put their book together, I had prompts from, what is the one thing you definitely want to accomplish today? Because sometimes we don't goal set very well. Or I have prompts like, when you had dinner last night, did you eat your food or did you savor your food? and asking people to start to think about these automatic actions that we do. Do you eat in front of a television or do you eat with your family? Because we're really good at disconnecting from things. And part of the writing aspect of meditation for me and what I've taught my students is connect back in just a little bit. You know, so many people I've talked to, if I say, did you have breakfast? Yes. What did you have? Oh, I had some toast and maybe oatmeal. Okay, what was the texture of the toast? And then people have to stop and think, oh, you've learned that food is something that you do, and it's kind of a fuel, and every once in a while you do it correctly and get your balances. But did you savor it? Did you enjoy it? Is it something that you could actually connect back in with? And probably because I'm a foodie, I can say yes a lot.
Yeah.
But understanding how these different things affect you. Like sometimes even your dearest of friends will make a comment and your feelings get hurt. And all of a sudden you're like, well, they're my best friend. They didn't mean it. And you squash it down. Okay, well, when's the last time you accidentally got your feelings hurt and what did you do about it? Because then it helps you start to process things instead of repress. I guess my fourth tip is this. Remember, you have a choice. You
Well,
do
wait, so
have,
we had get comfy, have a prompt.
yep.
So was there a third? I know you had your top 3, and I'll go
Okay,
back and I'll
we're going to
outline.
go back to me being not so great with numbers.
No, it's okay. I just wanna make sure I didn't miss anything because
Okay.
I'm just so intrigued by this. And with the prompts, because I
Yes.
saw and people have access to your website. I saw that there were different things that you can do with the writing. You can have a prompt.
Mhm.
Can people just create their own prompts? Is there
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
You have to have that space. Otherwise, resentment kind of creeps in there and then you don't want to do it. So some days, yeah, free write.
Okay. And so
Um,
we're getting comfy. We're
okay.
having a prompt or we're just free writing. And then what?
I like to remind people you have a choice. And a lot of times we feel like things happen to us that we don't have control over. And that is true. But we do have a choice in how we react to it. And some days it is very, very difficult to choose joy. I usually try to, but sometimes it's rough. But when I start to recognize, okay, but I can pay my bills this month. I have a vehicle that works. I have a family that I adore and adores me back. I have a job that I love. I've got a great boss. I can start to say, all right, here's this little thing that happened and I'm annoyed. Usually it's drivers in Michigan who forget that snow comes and that you cannot do 90 in the snow.
Yeah, probably not. It's not a good
Not
choice.
so much.
Yeah.
But me reminding myself, well, you can get upset by this and you're going to road rage in your car and it's going to do absolutely nothing for anybody. Or you can put on your favorite song, belt with the best of them, get your singing catharsis out, and you're still going to arrive at your location safe and sound. So,
Beautiful. That's beautiful. And then do we incorporate like the breathing and do you or is this the mindfulness that we're talking about in this moment is just being present with the thoughts and writing them?
this, in this particular case, for writing as meditation, it's being very present with your thoughts and writing it down. Where breathing has come in a couple of times is if people were just frenetic, because midterm time, wow, I'm like, let's bring it all the way down.
Right.
Let's, we're going to get into child's pose. Here is your breathing pattern. I'll talk to you in 4 minutes because sometimes you do have to settle yourself. Um, or the other way is that free write. Sometimes I'm like, just write down the words that come to mind. Don't try to make sentences. Don't try to make sense of it. Just scribble it down. Because sometimes a good brain dump is what you need to settle you.
Do you encourage people to have a particular like thing that they write on? Is it meaningful to people to have a particular type of, you know, medium, paper?
Absolutely, 100%. So I've had two different clients that I can talk about. One was a woman trying to process trauma from childhood about being touched inappropriately, and she was going through a divorce. And I suggested that she go and get a notebook that spoke to her. And she came back with one of those really cool sequins ones where if you flip it one way, it's one color, half the
Oh,
sequence
yeah,
down.
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, nice.
fun. And then I had her go, I said, here's the hard part for you. Go buy a $30 pen. And her eyes got huge. And she's like, what? I said, a $30 pen. I said, let me know when you've done it and we can come back and start writing. And it took her 2 weeks.
Wow.
2
Okay.
weeks. And she came back and she's like, that's the hardest thing I've ever done. I said, right, because you give to a fault. So you give and give and give and give and never get anything back. So you buying that pen for you was the heavy lift. Because, who just goes and drops $30 on a pen?
Yeah.
So that was part of hers. And then another young guy I was working with, again, processing some childhood trauma and abuse. We got something highly flammable because once he got done, once we had gone through the session and he was ready, we burned it.
Yeah.
And released it. And I could watch the physical transformation in his body as he set it on fire. It was just when people say you can see a weight lifted off somebody's shoulders, that is very, very true. So yeah, I tell people if you're going to do like work with it, this is not just your daily meditation journal or something that's a little lighter. Yeah, get a notebook that speaks to you. Be ready to burn it. Don't get too attached.
Right.
But sometimes we have to do the cathartic of, yes, it's burned, it's gone, it's all away. All the pages are ash and they have floated away. Here's your clean slate. And I always have a prompt book that I create for them and I make it pretty and I do the little cover. And that's their new start that they get afterwards is you've done the hard work, you've done this thing. So now, one of the first prompts I ask people is what's going to bring you joy today? I mean, that could be your first sip of coffee in the morning. It could be getting a hug from your friend or your kid, but starting to retrain our brains that we do a lot and we're busy, and especially our younger people today having to work 2 or 3 jobs just to exist. There's not a lot of me time. It's not given anymore. So I'm starting to eke it in, but I did my last teaching stint was in January semester of 2023. And then I took the position of director of faculty professional development. Yes, I do make them breathe as well. Yes, I do incorporate yoga into meetings.
Good.
Just in case you wonder how I roll. But the last class that I had, the one story that sticks out to me was I had a young guy. He was heavy coming in and I was like, okay, well, let him get to know me before I'm all like, so what's on your mind? And eventually at a point we were talking and he's like, yeah, my girlfriend just left me. And I said, okay. I said, well, you now need to practice being a me instead of a we. And here's a book. Let's start to write about it. And he still calls me up to this day. He's like, let's go get lunch and talk about things. And it's been like a whole year, but he told me last week, he's like, you have no idea how transformative you were for me. He's like, you saw me as a person and I hadn't had that experience in college yet. And I was like, well, hey, I'm glad pass the joy, pay it forward. So
That is so beautiful. That is so beautiful. I wrote down, because I was going to ask you, I was like, well, what might be just a prompt that we can throw out is that, for our episode to encourage people. But I wrote down what's going to bring you joy today. That be I guess you would say it doesn't have to be that for people, but if they are struggling to think of what to write, that's a start.
It's a great start. And a lot of times it's my world's favorite prompt for this very reason. We go through life. Sometimes you experience happiness, sometimes you're sad. But do you remember what joy actually feels like? Because a lot of times people are like, oh, that was funny. It made me laugh. Or, oh, I'm happy that I have people around me. Joy is a whole other state of being, whole other state of being. And I think we lose sight of it a lot. So my first prompt is, what's going to bring you joy today? A second one is, what are you doing for yourself today?
So important. Well,
So,
Jennifer, Dr. JFF, I, I don't, I don't remember having a conversation I've enjoyed more than this for a while. So
great.
thank you.
Thank you.
You.
This
Is
was
there,
great.
oh my gosh, so great. Is there anything else you want our viewers and listeners to know before I close this out?
Yeah, actually there is. Here's what everyone, you matter.
Oh,
You matter. People
you
see you.
matter.
People see you for who you are and the goodness you bring. So don't ever let somebody allow you to forget that.
You are a kind, encouraging woman, and it's Women's History Month. So I'm
Yes,
not sure, this probably won't air during Women's History Month. So if you're watching or listening right now, you might be thinking, wait, it's not. But when we're recording right now, it is.
it is.
So I am so thrilled that you were here. And in the show notes, I will put all of Jennifer's contact information, at least what she wants me to share, where you can get in touch with her, reading. She has all of her book series, all of that stuff, which I cannot wait to ask her more about. Thank you for joining us today. And as always, I ask you to download and rate and review and share. And if you're not following me, I don't do a ton of social media, but Facebook is the primary place where I live. So if you're not there, the link's in the show notes. If you're not part of our private women's group, A Place for Women, link is in the show notes. Everything you need will be there. And then what we do at the end, Jennifer, is I say until next time, and then we say together, consider yourself hugged.
Ah, I love that.
All right. Are you ready?
Ready.
Okay. Until next time,
Consider yourself hugged.
hugged. I think we
Awesome.
synced up more than most did, so